Welcome back everybody, and what I'm going to be doing in this video is going out for a couple of days on Cadair Idris, which is this feature behind me in Wales. So why am I doing this then? So I'm out for a couple of days. I'm going to basically take everything I need for an overnight camp, with all my food, water, spare clothes, sleeping bag, tent, all that good kit. And what I'm doing is I'm actually training for my mountain leader course, and it's just a good opportunity to practice my navigation using, you know, all the traditional methods. I've got my pacer here, I've got my 1 in 25,000 map and my compass. So I have got a backup on my watch to give me a grid if I need it, but my primary means are using the old school methods there that I've just shown. So everything I'm going to be using for the next couple of days is here. So that's my rucksack there. It's about 13 kilos worth of gear, and in there, like I say, I've got my rations, water, sleeping bag, tent, everything ready to go. And where I'll be going is up this bad boy here and all the way up there. Okay then, so I've been going for about 45 minutes now. Traversed a fairly good amount of height. Yeah, some quite steep ground I've just covered. I'm on a relatively flat bit now, just gradually uphill. And the next bit is going to be kind of the steepest part of the climb. So we've got this coming up. Obviously you can't see the top there because of the mist. So this is going to be the challenging part of probably the most difficult bit over the next few days. So we'll see how I get on with that. So I'm working my way up that steep segment now, and yeah, it's pretty steep. What you got to think about when you're on bits like this, it's just the basics. Take it slow and steady. Try and reduce your chance of having an injury by making sure you're placing your feet consciously properly in a good place, you know, not on slippy rocks, things like that, and also not burning yourself out, just taking it nice and steady. As I say, slow and steady wins the race. So yeah, basically just work hard, you know. And you can probably see not too far from the top now, but some very steep ground to cover here. Just treating myself. Okay, so I've just got up to the top of that high feature. I'll put a picture up on the video of that last bit I just did. Very steep in places, literally using all 4 points of contact, some points. What we're going to do now, because I've actually exerted myself a fair bit on that last bit, is I'm just going to take a quick breather and grab a brew. There's nothing like a nice brew to square your morale away, especially when it's cold and wet like it is here. You'll probably see now, totally misted in here. So what I'm going to do is take a quick breather, check my map and plan the next part of my route. Always a good idea to prep a brew before you move off on a trek, especially if it's particularly cold weather. These flask mug things that you get from places like Cotswolds, awesome bit of kit in my eyes. You can whack a brew in one of these at the start of the day, and it will still be hot, you know, for a good few hours into your walk. So instead of having to get out your cooker and make one, you've already got one ready to go. And even if you do stop and make one, you know, you might not want to drink your whole brew in a oneer. You might want to, you know, drink half of it, save the rest for when you do your next brew stop. So next thing I'm going to do is map out, and I'm going to plan the next part of my route. And looking at the map there, this is one of 25,000. You can see it is one mass of contour lines, so a lot of climbing up and down, but I've actually just climbed the steepest part of my route that I'm going to do over the next 3 days, so that's good news. So that was just a couple of minutes stop there because I didn't stop for more than a couple of minutes. I haven't put any warm kit on. If I was going to be doing a slightly longer stop, I'd always chuck warm kit on, okay? What you don't want to do is let your body temperature drop, especially in an exposed position like this where you've got a lot of cold wind hitting you. So, kit back on. Before you move off, always make sure you haven't left anything laying around anywhere, especially if you've been eating anything or, you know, getting a brew on or whatever. Make sure there's no wrappers on the floor, no rubbish. Make sure you check your map, you know your bearing, you know your distance, and then off you go. Okay, so what I'm using here as a navigational aid are these fences. So I've moved along this fence. There's a junction there that you can see just there, and then there's like a three-way junction of these fences, styling, and it heads off this way. So on the map then, they're marked, juggle around here, they're marked by these black lines that you can see here. So that's the junction there, and that's the line I want to be following. But I'd always follow that up by taking a bearing off the map, and the bearing I've taken is like so, which points perfectly in a direction, basically confirms my my route along the left hand side of this fence line here. As you can see, it's quite misty, so you can't see more than about 150 metres at the moment. At the very best, it kind of comes into about 75 at times as well. So taking a bearing is always a good way to make sure that you're on the right route, in conjunction with navigational features like this. Another thing you may not realise on some of the skies, just a little cheat here, you've actually got a grid reference there as well. So visibility's coming quite a bit now, so it's even more important to keep on top of pacings, bearings, and just looking at the ground, you know. For example here, if you have a look over this edge here, see how that is just absolutely super steep all the way around there. So at the moment it's probably down to about 20 metres visibility. If it came in any closer than that, it wouldn't take an awful lot if you weren't paying attention to find yourself falling off the edge of something like that, which obviously goes without saying, wouldn't end very well. But just the fact that you need to keep totally on top of your navigation in these sort of conditions, because you could end up going miles in the wrong direction before you realise it. You're just taking the path of least resistance. So really important to pay attention at all times in these challenging conditions. So this is the trig point, 893, it's the highest point in the area. I don't know how much you can hear of this because it's blowing a gale, you can probably tell. So I'm not going to spend very long up here. I'm literally going to get down off this feature now and find somewhere, a couple of K's to camp up for the night. Cheers. So it stopped raining at last there. I wasn't recording for a bit because it was absolutely hammering down with rain, and there's been some really strong wind as well. It's been up to like 30 knots. But yeah, it stopped raining now, and I'm about a K short of my overnight stop. So just taking in the views, whilst there are some in between the mist and the cloud and stuff. And yeah, looking forward to getting my camp set up for the night, getting a brew on, getting some hot scoff. So there's my tent set up for the night. We notice it's a little bit of a bowl there, which is good because it's keeping me out of the wind to a certain degree. And this is a Nordis tent. These ain't cheap, these things, but they're great because they're super lightweight, really compact as well for packing, and there's actually quite a bit of decent space inside that, especially, you know, for one person anyway. That's me, the tent set for the night. You know, what a view overlooking all this. Right then, so foot care in the field. One of the most important things you need to look after, if not the most important thing, are your feet. The mode of transport as a soldier, but also if you're ever out hiking, doing stuff like what I'm doing here. So really, really important you look after your feet. If you don't, they're going to deteriorate really rapidly, and you know, you're going to start getting sore feet. It's going to be difficult to start walking, especially when you're carrying weight. So once you've taken your socks off that you've been walking in all day, if you can, let your feet air for a little bit, do that. Get some foot powder on them. So I've got some normal, that's my coat of foot powder in there. Some people fill a bag up with foot powder. I don't bother doing that. I just take the actual the tub, but I'll put it inside the bag because it tends to leak. As you can see there, it's leaked a bit inside there. Make sure you've got decent quality socks to change your feet into. And the rule of thumb I always go by is 1 pair a day. If you don't get a chance to change them for some reason, you know, for tactical reasons in the military, then you're up a pair of socks. But I always go on the rule of thumb, 1 pair a day. And then what I've got over here, this is a pair of neoprene water sport shoes. So basically you could use these for walking around outside your tent whilst your boots are drying off if they are wet at all. And also you can use these for things like river crossings and stuff like that as well. So if you did need to cross a, you know, particularly deep river and your boots are going to get soaking wet, then you could put these on instead, and these are going to dry out a lot quicker because it's just thin material. It's like neoprene type stuff. So that's just a couple of things there on foot care. Morning. Okay, so it's about 6:15, day 2. Had actually a really good night's sleep in here last night. There was a bit of rain, but stayed completely dry in here. It's a good little tent actually. So from what I can gather, it's nice and dry outside. So yeah, a bit grey. Not too bad though, a lot better than yesterday. So yeah, nice and dry. So I'll get on with my morning routine then. Get a bit of breakfast on, a bit of admin, and then start packing the kit up and then on the move. So it's always a good idea to make sure you've got some food inside you before you move off. Don't ever think, oh, I'm not really hungry, I'm not going to bother having breakfast. It's important that you've got energy inside you. You might not get a chance to stop and brew up again, you know, depending on the weather conditions. So this morning I've got sausage and beans, mega. And what I personally do when I'm cooking is I always make a brew, and what I do is I fill up my mug that I'm going to be using for my brew with the water, so there's no wastage. So if you just pour the water straight into your cooking pot, you might not put enough in, or you might put too much in. So it's always a good idea to measure out properly. So that's in there now, and it tends to work out as a good amount of water too, for, you know, for cooking. Just make sure that's clear of the tent as well. The tent will melt. Obviously taking boiling the bag out of the water, just be careful you don't burn your fingers. And then get that water up in your cup. I'd normally be supporting this with my other hand, but I'm filming. Let's hope I don't brew it. As you can see there, perfect amount of water for that brew. Awesome. And that's it. Get on with eating the stuff. And obviously, you know, secret ingredient, bit of Tabasco to go in there too. Okay then, so had my breakfast, done my admin, all my kit's packed away now. That's it all stowed neatly in there. Last thing to pack away then is the tent. So I'll crack on with that, get that packed, and that'll be me ready to go. And that's it there. So that's a Nordisk Telemark 2. Let's say weighs less than a kilo, I think it says on there somewhere. Yeah, 950 grams. So pretty impressive for a 2-person tent. And I carry that in this bottom section of my rucksack, because yeah, it is wet now, and it keeps it away from all my dry kit and the rest of the bag. And that's actually held inside there with my sleeping mat as well, inside that bottom section there. So I've been packed up, ready to go. And what I'm going to do now is check the area, make sure I've not dropped anything, any little bits of, you know, torn off pieces of rubbish from food packs and stuff like that. Make sure there's absolutely nothing here, and then make my way off. So back on the road. This first bit, when you set off after packing up camp, always seems to be the hardest, doesn't it? Because your body's still fairly cold, you know, you haven't warmed up yet, and it's always a bit of a bonus if you're going straight uphill as well. But you know what, I love being in a place like this where it's a little bit remote, and you know, it's peaceful, away from the noise and busyness of everyday life. First couple of k's of the walk done. I've got myself up to a ridge line where I'm going to stop for a quick brew. Conditions today are so much better than yesterday, and I think that, you know, brings home a lesson of whenever you're out in the hills to make sure you're prepared for the worst. And when I say the worst conceivable kind of weather conditions that you possibly have. It's now August. Yesterday I was in driving rain, and winds of up to, it was about 30 knots. So just make sure that whenever you go out, don't just think, you know, at the bottom of the hill it's nice and sunny, you know, I should be alright in just what I'm wearing, a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, because the weather can change really, really quickly. And I'm not on about taking a full-size rucksack like this. I'm just on about taking the appropriate kit for the conditions you might face. I did see a video on YouTube recently where a guy who I know, who's a friend of mine, was saying that you don't need to, you know, plan for the worst all the time. I do think that was a little bit daft, because you do need to plan for the worst conceivable weather conditions. And like I say, we're not talking about snowstorms and stuff like that. Like he mentioned on his video, we're talking about conceivable potential weather conditions. But anyway, that all being said, let's have a little look at the views that you're rewarded with by pushing yourself a little bit. And that feature there that's clouded with a mist there, that's the high point I was on yesterday, where it was blowing an absolute gale. And a couple of k's down that valley there is where I just come from. So time for a quick rest and a brew, and then crack on with the rest of the route. So what we've got here then, just a little shelter that's been built up by people over time, a lot of rocks and stuff, and what it's been formed into is this circular shelter that's ideal for just getting out of the wind, and then you can throw off your rucksack, have a sit down and be sheltered a little bit, you know, from that wind and stuff. And as they used to say on Blue Peter, here's one I prepared earlier. Flipping awesome bit of kit, getting a brew when you get a stop, when you get a chance. Mega. And for any Americans watching this, this is coffee, it's not tea, alright? Okay, so just coming down off this high feature behind me now, dropping down into a saddle, and over to my left, over to the east, that's the view I've got. How awesome is that? And over behind that water feature, behind the big hills to the left. That's where I come from yesterday, right from behind over that feature there. Unfortunately I couldn't see anything yesterday because of the mist and the rain. Making up for it today, and then looking this direction here then to the south, that's the next big feature I'm going to be walking up. And then looking over to the west then, over behind those sort of features there, sort of down behind that, that's where I set up my camp last night, and that's where I just come from. So onwards and upwards. You're always going uphill at some point in the hills, aren't you? That's what they're called, the hills. But yeah, it's a bit of a nicer day today. At least you've got some views. Right, so at the top of that high feature then now, another quick break. That was quite a hard little climb, that. So another Brew stop, and just enjoying them views again. So it's pretty quiet up here today. I haven't seen anyone. Been up for a couple of hours now, apart from this fella here, him and his mates. So this one was obviously not too bothered about being in around people. Have a good one, mate. So quite a steep downward part of the route here. Very important that you watch your step as you're moving down this sort of ground. All these loose rocks everywhere. You wouldn't want to be falling on any of those or turning an ankle or something. So quite important as you're moving downhill to take your time and make sure your foot placement is good and that you're not going to slip or turn an ankle. Right, so I'm in the lower ground now and I'm walking on some kind of flatter ground, which is great. It's nice to have that kind of release of pressure on your legs, to be able to walk on the flat again. You probably notice I've taken a layer off. I've taken my windproof jacket off. It's important that you do keep an eye on what you wear and you don't overheat, because it's not hot but it's kind of warmish now as well. So I'm just making sure I'm not overheating by doing that. And yeah, so this is what we're walking through now. Nice track as well, kind of easy going now. It's all part of the route. Get wet underfoot alongside though. So this is more the sort of touristy part of the route. There's a car park not far from here. A lot of people kind of just walk up from their cars, look at the waterfalls and stuff. Fair enough, you know, each to their own. Nice little stone bridge over there. The water coming down from that direction, quite pleasant. And then heading down towards the main river there. So yeah, quite a pleasant little part of the walk here. Very green, and yeah, not far from the car park. I think it's about probably 10 minutes walk now from where I am to get back to the main car park. Not that I'll be stopping there, I've still got a few miles to go after that. Okay then, so I'm on the final leg of my couple of days out. Basically walking alongside a stream, sun's out, decent track to follow. So nice little way of finishing off, actually quite a sort of relaxing last couple of kilometres. And yeah, enjoyed a couple of days. Good opportunity to practice my navigation Pacings, bearings, timings, all that sort of stuff. And also, you know, your campcraft stroke fieldcraft type stuff. It's a good opportunity to get out and you know, in some challenging terrain. You can see there. And yeah, I had some challenging weather conditions yesterday too. Today's been a lot better, but you know, you take what you get. You can't choose, can you? The way I look at it is, you know, don't go out in absolutely wild, dangerous conditions, but also, on the other hand, if it is a bit rough, it's a good opportunity to practice your navigation in those more challenging conditions. So get out there, practice this sort of stuff. What I will say though is, you know, I've been doing this for a long time, not been big-headed. I have been doing this sort of stuff for a long time. I'm confident in my own skills. Probably best if you don't go and do this sort of stuff on your own. It's only a lot more dangerous if you do it on your own, okay? So get out with a friend, your missus, whatever, and enjoy the outdoors. Okay, and we'll catch you again soon. And as always, stay prepared. Always a bonus to see the US Air Force strutting this stuff, isn't it? Mega.